is Melissa Urena, and I am a residential realtor. I'm putting together this all about ADU class for you today because so many of my clients have been reaching out as the laws are changing and allowing folks to be able to build on their own lot. And let's be honest, as prices are getting more and more prohibitive, more folks are trying to figure out how can I create rental income with the property I already have? Or how can I create more space for myself without necessarily having to upgrade into something that's pretty cost prohibitive with everything that's going on in real estate and being so expensive now. So because this question of how does an ADU work, how do I build it? What's the cost? What's the timetable is coming up? I wanted to make sure to provide everyone with an expert, someone who's done it over and over and has some real credentials under his belt. And for that reason, Cameron will be joining us here today. So Cameron, why don't you take it over, tell folks a little bit about yourself, and then you can go ahead and just jump right in.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Number one, thank you for having me and share kind of my knowledge in this space and what I do. And while I'm pulling this up, can you see it? Can everybody see this screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this right now. Give me 1 second from the beginning. So as Melissa mentioned, let's wait at the end for questions because I'm going to go through a wide variety of stuff here, and I'm sure I'll answer some stuff that you might have in your mind. So I'll try to be fairly quick. I know you all have stuff to do, but hopefully you find this informative. As Melissa mentioned, my name is Cameron Meredith. My company, I'm actual partner in it, which we're going to touch on later, is ADU West Coast. I grew up in Huntington Beach, so from Orange County. And then our office is actually in Seal Beach. So we cover LA, Orange County, parts of the Inland Empire, and we are a design build company that does all the architectural plans. We do all the engineering. We go to the city on your behalf to pull your permits, and then we also manage the construction. So today, what I'm going to talk to you about is, here's some topics that we're going to go through. So who is ADU West Coast? That way you can learn a little about us and our credentials. What is an ADU? I'm sure a lot of you know, but we're going to go through some specifics of that. I'll show you some pictures and videos of ADUs that we've done so you can see what it looks like once completed. We'll go through some of the main benefits, some of the main 2020 law changes. That's when this stuff really took off and when the legislation kind of shifted in your favor as a homeowner. And then average cost of ADUs, what to look for, what's going to bring that cost up or down. And then we'll go through some financing programs, what we're seeing a lot lately. And then at the very end, as I mentioned, we'll do a question and answer. So who is ADU West Coast? Here's the four main partners right here to the top left. We have Chung Lam, who's a structural engineer and a GC who's been doing construction development for 10 plus years. Ron Householder, he's been in mortgage and real estate for 20 years before moving towards construction. I am Cameron Meredith, and I'm a former real estate professional before focusing more on lot development and custom homes. And then Chi Lam is actually Chung's brother. He's a designer with 15 years design architectural work. So as I told you, we do everything in-house under one roof, which I would say that differentiates us from most companies. A lot of companies are just either contractors or they just do the design. But again, we're design build. The reason I show you this picture up here, we come from a custom home background. So this was a single lot. We split the lot, built 2 new custom homes. Again, it's just to show you where we come from and where our background is. So what is an ADU? An ADU is a second or third house with complete independent living facilities, which includes a kitchen, bathroom for 1 or more persons. To the left here, you can see different types of ADUs, which I'll go over in a second. But what ADU stands for is accessory dwelling unit. You've probably known it as granny flat, grandpa flat, mother-in-law quarter, father-in-law quarters. Those are some other names for it. Up here, you're going to see the different types, as I mentioned earlier. Over the garage is common if you want to keep a parking spot. Please note that that can get pretty costly because you do have to restructure that first floor to support the second story. So again, it is doable. It's just one of the more costly methods of building an accessory dwelling unit. Right here to the right is a garage conversion. You can convert a garage, whether it's attached or detached, does not matter. This is the most common and the most cost effective. Anytime we can use existing structure, even though we reinforce it, we're going to save on cost. So again, doesn't matter whether it's attached or detached, you can convert your garage. Below here is a standalone unit. That's very common if you have enough room in your backyard. You can actually build up to a 1,200 square foot ADU as long as you have the setbacks, which I'll talk about later. And then bottom right here, you have a basement or attic conversion. Again, we don't have many of those in California. Interesting enough, we're actually in the middle of planning for doing one out of a basement in East LA. So that'll be our first basement conversion. But it's challenging, it's interesting. But again, if you did have a basement or an attic, you are allowed to convert that space as well. I'm not going to touch on this too much. It's no surprise we're in a housing crisis, right? Especially when you get towards the more popular metro areas. I live in Long Beach. The closer you get to downtown, the more crowded it gets. Same thing with Los Angeles. Same thing with San Francisco and San Diego. So the reason I'm showing you this, the whole reason this bill was passed in 2020 and why the regulations are so much more lenient is because we are in a housing crisis and we need more housing. So that is why this bill was passed in 2020. And we're going to go through some of those later on in the slide. So here are some pictures of ones we've done. This was actually a one-car garage before to the left. We added square footage here to make it a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. You can see it's a brand new turnkey unit. This was in South LA, kind of near USC. Right here, this was a project we did in Altadena. This was a ground up 400 square foot ADU, which would be the same size as your standard 2-car garage. So again, you can kind of see the quality and type of work that we do when we build these things. What else can ADUs be used for? So before I pull this up, remember it has to have a full kitchen as well as a bathroom in order to get the permitting. The city's not going to let you convert your garage into an extra bedroom without having the kitchen and bathroom because it's got to be an accessory dwelling unit, quote unquote. But that isn't to say we haven't seen other things. So if we click here, elderly care is very big. Music studio, we've seen with COVID, a lot of people build kind of just one big open studio space where they can work out of their office there. Workout, yoga, art space, guest house is huge, entertainment, just kind of an extra room, and then income property. The number one we see, like I told you, is elderly care, people moving their parents or grandparents back, or people moving their young adult kids or grandkids back. We see that a lot as well. And then income property, obviously people rent this out, which I'll go through some scenarios later on in the slide. But interesting, I would say it's about, from the ones that we've done and the ones we're doing, I would say it's about 70% of people moving family members back rather than rent it out. It seems like multi-generational living is pretty common here in certain areas, and that's what we see a lot of, which I really enjoy. I like bringing families together. What are some benefits of ADUs? So ADUs can provide a source of income for homeowners. So out of a 400 square foot unit, depending on what part of Los Angeles or Orange County you're in, I'm just kind of going based off average in certain areas we've done. We're seeing about 1,800 plus on average for a 400 square foot unit, 1-bedroom unit. ADUs allow families to be near one another while maintaining privacy. So if you can see the bottom right here, a lot of times clients will have us build a fence. So it's almost like 2 separate properties, even though it's the same parcel. But again, it leaves a little more privacy. That way your mom or grandma's not living in the same living quarters as you. ADUs allow a more affordable approach to senior living. Again, I touched on that in the last slide. ADUs give a homeowner an increase in property value. Now, this is a question I get all the time. It's not cut and dry. There is no equation for this. I will tell you, it is extra square footage that counts, and it's an extra bedroom and an extra bath. So although there is no set in stone equation, again, the appraiser is going to count that as new square footage, bedroom, and bath. So depending on your area would be, I guess, depending upon your value as well. ADUs increase the housing supply, especially in urban areas where it's needed. I talked about that in those larger cities. We definitely need more housing, which in return is going to help everybody with more affordable housing. This is huge. Owners can now build up to 2 more units on a single family zone property. So the state's going to allow you to build an ADU and a junior ADU. There is one rule to that. If you were to build an ADU and a junior ADU with your single family residence, you would actually be occupied. It's state law that says the owner has to occupy one of those units. Now, if you were just to build one or the other, so if you had your single family residence and you were to build just an accessory dwelling unit, or if you were just to build the junior ADU, you can rent both of those properties out and live elsewhere. It's not an issue. It only becomes an issue when you build the ADU and the junior ADU. The owner has to live in one of them. Now, the definition between what differentiates a junior ADU, the technical definition of a junior ADU, it has to be built within livable square footage of your main house. So if you have an extra bedroom, or if you have an extra any storage room or area that you can convert, that technically would be considered the junior ADU. That has to be under 500 square feet. So not to get into too much detail because we don't got a lot of time, but if you have questions on that, write that down. We can talk about that later. And then help solve part of the housing crisis here in California, just simply by providing more of it. I always like to show this slide just to get in people's minds, what are the city benefits of adding ADUs? Because remember, number one, it's state law, but why do these cities want to allow these ADUs? Number one, it counts towards RHNA, which is your Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and Housing Element Needs. So each city has a goal each year that they need to meet. This producing these ADUs helps meet that goal. Another goal that each city has to meet is more affordable housing requirements, which in return ADUs do. And then it conserves a variety of community needs. So we see a lot of young adults, as I mentioned. We see a lot of elderly people, a lot of workforce, a lot of nurses, teachers, etc. So it brings a wide variety of community needs. And then an increase in property taxes. So this is another big question for you as a homeowner or a real estate professional. How does this affect my property taxes? To put it very simply, and I might confuse you on this, but imagine if you had your house and just whatever you pay in taxes right now, just let's say that it's $400 a month, right? You keep those existing taxes. Now what happens is you get assessed by the cost of the construction. So let's say the cost of the construction was $100,000. You get taxed $100,000 times your tax basis, which is, let's say it's 1%. That gets added on to your existing tax. So I know that could be confusing, but again, if you think about it, it's just the cost of the construction times your current tax basis plus what you already pay right now. So it's not that much, depending on the cost of your project. But again, if you have more questions on that, you can write a question later and we'll go over that, okay? Some of the state law changes. So again, there's a lot of state law changes. I'm just gonna go over the major ones. Number one, the owner no longer has to live on the property to rent it out. So remember now, that's only if you build one unit. If you build an ADU and a junior ADU, as I mentioned on the last couple slides, you do have to occupy one. But if you just build one or the other, you don't have to live in it. The next one is HOAs must allow ADUs. We're doing one right now in an HOA and it hasn't been an issue. I can't promise you that an HOA is not going to give you trouble though. HOAs are weird. I'm just telling you the one that we have dealt with hasn't given us trouble, but it is in the state law that they cannot stop ADUs. No minimum lot size requirement. Before there was a minimum lot size requirement in order to build one. An ADU and a junior ADU can be built. I think I touched on that earlier. There is new multifamily ADU laws. So this is actually really big. I'm not really going to touch on it too much because I can go into a lot of detail on this. But if you or people you know own multifamily property, this is a huge opportunity for them to add on units. Not to get into too much detail, but you can potentially add 2 more freestanding ADU units if you have enough room, open space, whether it's grass or concrete, and they will actually let you convert storage space, laundry space, etc. Again, I'm not going to get into too much detail because this is kind of the basics, but you can always ask me questions on that later. Limited parking requirements. If you convert a garage, there's no parking requirement. The only way where you're going to run into providing parking is if you build a bigger unit. So depending on your lot and your front house and driveway, let's say you were to max out an ADU in your backyard, you wanted to build a 1,200 square foot, there could be local parking requirements for that. So again, we can touch on that later if you have questions. That's kind of more of a level 2, level 3 thing. But again, the parking requirements are very limited on this. And then cities cannot override major law changes. That's huge as well. And then, as I mentioned, the largest you can build is up to 1,200 square feet. So average cost, this is a question I get all the time. The cost is always changing, okay? And the numbers I'm going to show you, it's not going to be what's exactly at your house. Yours could be more, it could be less. This is just an average of kind of what we're seeing right now across the board. Yes, you probably could find people that could do it cheaper. We always can, right? But just to give you an idea, this would be an all-in cost for the client, regardless of our contract and what it includes and excludes. I'm just giving everybody an idea of what they should expect to pay when they build these things. So number one, if you're doing a total garage conversion, again, this varies between attached, what your lot looks like, all that. But your typical garage conversion, whether attached or detached, is going to be somewhere in the field all in of about 110, 120 plus or minus. Again, depends on your lot, depends on your garage, but that should be about what you should expect to pay for a completed unit. Down here, if you're doing something from the ground up of the same size, you're looking at around the 145 plus or minus range. Again, these are just average numbers. Yours could be more, it could be less. And if you're going above a garage, the same square footprint, 400 square feet, could be plus or minus of almost the same 145. As I mentioned, going above the garage, the reason why it's so costly, you have to restructure that first floor, which requires a lot of material, as well as engineering. So just in case you're wondering, that's why that cost gets so high. And again, every project's always different, okay? So I can't stress enough, yours could be more, it could be less, okay? What to look for with cost. So this is a big indicator on what's going to bring that cost up or down. So first thing we look at is electrical. Where's that electrical coming in from? Is it coming from above? Is it coming from below? How far is the electrical? Sewer, this is another big item. How far is the sewer connection? Do we have to trench through a lot of concrete? What type of material do we have to trench through? These are all things that bring that cost up. Raised foundation or slab, a little bit easier with a raised foundation. Condition of the surrounding area. This is really big. For example, we always make a note, which I'm going to show you our site notes when we go out, when we check properties and what to look for, which will make a good ADU or not. But for example, of surrounding grounds, we always note the condition of whether it's concrete, soil, grass, whatever it is. But one thing to look for is a slope. So let's say your front single family property is at the street and you have a detached garage in the back, and that garage is sloped down, 6 feet, 7 feet, whatever it is. Just know that could create issues. And the reason why is we have to connect sewer to the front. So if we don't have a proper slope from the back of the property to the front, it could require a sewer pump. It could require more engineering so we could have that proper slope. But again, this is all stuff that we're looking at. Down here, condition of the garage, that's another big thing. If we're doing a garage conversion, what does the slab look like? There's always hairline cracks, we know that, but is it totally deteriorated? Is there a huge crack we can put our hand in? Is there termite damage? Is the roof deteriorating? This is all stuff that we look at. So here is an actual inspection list. This is what I use when I go out and do all the inspections. Property wall setback, so how close is that property wall to the proposed ADU? Primary dwelling setback, how close is the detached garage or proposed ADU to the primary dwelling? We look at the driveway condition and determine the material of that driveway. Oops, excuse me. My bad here. Surrounding grounds. So again, I kind of touched on that. What does the surrounding grounds look like? Is there anything noticeable as far as slope, etc.? Roof, what does the roof of the detached garage look like? Inside structure, if we're looking at the garage, if we're converting that. Slab, again, we're going to look at that if we're converting the garage. Dimensions of the backyard. We always look at sewer and the distance to the primary residence to estimate the sewer cost. Electrical, so we locate where the panel is and the distance to that, and then the size of the garage or open area. So again, 11 quick notes. We take pictures, measurements, but this should give you a good idea of what we're looking for as far as our inspections go. Here's some rental scenarios. So again, these are some things that we've seen as far as former clients and current clients. So let's look at scenario number one. Very simple, live in the main house, rent the ADU out. Again, we're seeing about 1,800 average for parts of OCLA for a 400 square foot, 1 bedroom, 1 bath unit. The second option is to live in the ADU unit and rent the main house out. And then depending on your area, again, these are just kind of scenarios for you to look at. But let's say your front house is a 4 bedroom and it rents for 3,200 or $4,000, whatever it is. You can customize your own ADU unit. It's brand new, just like you saw, and then rent that front house out. That's actually probably the most common thing that we're seeing right now is people moving in the ADU, whether they're empty nesters or they just kind of want to make their own custom unit, and then they're cash flowing on that front house. The third option is very common as well. People want to move out of state or maybe have, home somewhere else. They rent both the ADU and the single family. And again, depending on your area, 4,000 or 5,000 a month. Again, always do your due diligence with what your rent is for the area. But this is just a scenario for you. So again, these are the three main ones of what we see people do. Number two seems to be becoming more of a trend. Steps with building an ADU. So first thing we do is, let's say you or a client or somebody, wanted to build one of these. We always hop on the phone first, ask questions, pull your property up on a Google Maps. From that point, once everything looks right, we ask a few, detailed list of questions. We actually make the client, just like if they were buying a home, get either pre-qualified or send us a proof of funds. And a lot of people don't like this, and I get why, but you got to understand why we do it. So before we did this, we would actually go on 30 to 40 appointments, week and a half. And I was the one doing all of it. Come to find out that only about 20% to 30% of those people could ever do a construction job. So that's why we do it. We have people that you can talk to. I'm sure Melissa has people you can talk to as well. But again, we do require a pre-qual or proof of funds before doing a home site consultation. Once we do the home site visit, which is the number 2 site inspection, that takes about 30-40 minutes. We do notes, measurements, pictures. It takes us about 2 weeks to generate a quote. Once we generate the quote for you, remember we're design build, so it's encompassing the entire project. Let's say you liked us, you wanted to get started. We start the pre-construction phase, which is everything you're going to need to get your permit. Again, we go to the city for you and pull your permits. Once they give us final approval, we start construction, which I'll talk about timeline on the next slide. And then once we're completed, you can either rent it out or move a family member back, whatever you guys want to do with that. Timeline, this is, again, same thing with cost. It changes because it varies between project and it varies between city. These are all just numbers for you to kind of have a generalization or idea of what we're seeing right now. Number one, we kind of break it up into 2 different things. Garage conversions are they're taking about 10 months, give or take right now. Pre-construction is about 4 months plus or minus, and then the construction is about 6 months plus or minus. Ground up, it's going to take about a year. Pre-construction, 4 months plus or minus, and then your construction is about 7 months plus or minus. Again, I can't reiterate enough. Each project's different, so depending on your size and your scope and your city, it could vary based upon these numbers. Here's some basic floor plans on our website, which I'll go through at the end. You can follow us on social media and whatnot, but we do have different types of floor plans you can look at. 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, studio, all sorts of stuff. This is just to show you an example of some how we can work some space. We do have pre-engineered plans. These are plans that we've already passed in major cities, Los Angeles City, Los Angeles County, Long Beach, etc. So what are the benefits of this? You can save on time. You can save on money because we've already engineered the whole plan. And then it's standard plans for any 2-car garage. So your standard 2-car garage will range anywhere from $325 all the way to $400. We have footprints that will fit within these garages. So again, that will be on our website and you can check that out as well. Here is a garage conversion walkthrough. So for those of you who are watching, try to check out this video. This is one we did in Altadena. It's a 400 square foot accessory dwelling unit. And we built this from the ground up. So you can see again, the quality, very nice work, shaker cabinets, Quartz countertops. Fridge goes right there. There's some nice tile in there. To the right here, we always put a stackable washer and dryer, but we always recommend doing it unless you tell us not to, but highly recommended. And then there's the bedroom there. Can lights, everything. So, this gives you a good idea of what the finalized product looks like. And you can imagine, again, 400 square feet, that's your standard 2-car garage. So, we could build this just out of your existing garage space. Next section is financing options. So I'm just going to show you the main ones. Obviously the rates went up a little bit, but the number one we see still is a cash out refinance. That seems to be the best rate on the money for people pulling it out. HELOC, that's another good way for people to finance this. They'll just use the equity in their home. Home renovation loans, that's another third option, not as good as your cash out or HELOC as far as rate, and then cash. But obviously all of these, they do require, I would say, at least 20% equity, depending on where you live and your situation. So I would say you definitely, if you're trying to finance this, you would definitely need to probably tap into that equity from some sort of property that you own. But other than that, that's the end of my presentation. Before I answer any questions, right here is all our social media and our website. So everything is just ADU West Coast. So if you have Instagram, Facebook, we put a ton of YouTube videos out. It's very informal stuff. It's not just, TikTok videos or anything like that. It's really, really geared towards learning about ADUs. So if you want to follow us there, feel free. This is my cell phone, which I don't really give out too much, as well as my email. So if you guys have questions, have properties you want me to check out, or want to hop on the phone to even ask questions, you can always call me. If I don't answer, you can always leave a message and I'll get back to you. But with that being said, since we're at the end, why don't I open it up for some questions?
Okay, so let me see here if there were any questions. I think, Cameron, maybe since I made you a co-host, maybe you can see the questions. I don't see any questions in the chat immediately.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see anything either yet.
Okay, so I guess you just did such a great job that nobody has questions.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just driving and I've just pulled up home and I wasn't able to type in there. So sorry about that.
Roderick, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Roderick, by the way. I'm Bolden. I had a question about on the ADU. I know you mentioned the tie-in of the sewer line, but does it have its own separate address?
Yes.
And does it?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, does it have its own separate address, and then the utilities to it? Is it tied in to the main house, or do you have to, create a new address, which again, goes up on the taxes and everything else, and you got to have your own pack pole and gas line and all that. So it's not tied into the existing.
So here's what most of our clients do and what we do. So number one, to answer the address question, we always do a separate address. So what happens is the client just calls the county or city, wherever they're at, and they'll apply for a separate address while we're doing the construction. And it's no issue getting that. As far as the utilities go, we always have a new sewer line that goes out usually down the driveway, because that's where a lot of times the sewer runs. But we connect a new existing sewer line, a new sewer line for the ADU. We tap into the existing front house sewer right in the front of the property. So that way, if there's any issues with the front house, there's a clean out right there and it doesn't affect the accessory dwelling unit. Some people or some contractors might tie into the back of the property, where that could create a lot of issues, if that makes sense. But no, we do not connect to the main city sewer. That's a separate cost. That can get pretty costly, sometimes up to $10,000. But no, we just run the whole new sewer line right to the front of your property. And then
Right.
to answer your question on utilities, which is a big question, we always tie into the main house utility. I can just speak for us and what we do. We always include a separate electrical meter. If the client wants a separate water meter or a separate gas meter, that is a separate cost. And again, these are all averages that I'm telling you. It's about 5,000 on average per meter. So if you wanted a separate gas or a separate electric, it's 5,000 each. But again, we always include a separate electric meter. Just because you don't have a separate meter doesn't mean you don't have a line running. It'll still run into the main house. So you're just pulling off the main house gas and the main house water.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
for me, I'm highly interested in it, but I would like to call you on the side on this because you got to see my particular situation to kind of know where I'm going with it. But yeah, this is a great presentation so far.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear.
Thank you, Roderick. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I know that some of you were watching through your cars, or so maybe didn't get a chance to type in questions into that chat.
I have a question, Melissa. I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
This is Victoria. Hi.
Yes.
I just wanted to know the process. So will your company work with like an HOA? So if you're even though you still have a single family home, you're still under an HOA. Is there separate, I know you have to do the permits with the city, but is there a separate process or approvals that are needed with HOAs?
Yes, it's a great question. And they have their own, I guess, submittal process depending on your HOA. So I always tell the client to ask, before signing anything, hey, what's your process? But yes, what we do, since we already packaged that for the city, it's the same exact thing. So we package it for the HOA, and then you just hand it off to the HOA. They'll review it, and anything they need from us, we'll provide. But usually what that is they want to know what type of windows you're using. Is the exterior going to match, which it has to anyway. So a lot of it's more of what type of material you're using, what does the floor plan look like. But yes, we will handle all that for you.
Thank you.
Wags, you had a question?
Yeah, I saw it. So I see here, do you have any average cost for 1,200 square feet? You know what, I would say, without seeing a property, it's hard to tell, but depending on like cost right now, I would probably guess, depending on what you build, how you build it, you're probably looking at anywhere from 230 all the way up to 300K. Again, depends on your lot, how it's laid out, and your whole design. But again, that's why it's hard to tell because every project's so different. But if I were to tell you a range, I would say expect for about that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Cameron. If we did not get to your question,
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, actually, my question is, are solar panels required for ADU constructions?
Great question. So here's the rule with that. Any new construction in California, including an ADU, has to have solar, quote unquote. Depending on the city, we've done a bunch in Long Beach, and they've made us do solar ready. So basically in the plan to have, it's ready for solar, but they never made us install the solar panels. So on the other hand, we have Lakewood right now where we're pushing a project through, and before they didn't require the solar panels, but apparently now we're going to find out in the next week or so that they are. So it always varies between city, but I would just err on the side, if you're building a ground up ADU or ground up anything, err on the side that the state or city is going to make you put solar in. So yeah, if it's ground up, yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us. If Cameron's been very kind to provide his personal cell phone, email, and all his socials here. If you want to reach out to with a specific question, please reach out to Meredith. Sorry, Cameron. If you are trying to figure out if the right move for you is to build this ADU on your home, or just buy a home that already has the square footage that you need for your family, and you're weighing that decision between building on my own home or maybe selling my home and buying something that's already ready to move into, then I can help you do that side-by-side analysis and give you, values, numbers, and some other things to weigh those decisions. So Cameron and I together as a team can help you, answer some of these questions between build, move, etc. And we'll leave it there and let everyone enjoy their family. Thank you for joining.
Quick question.
And
I got a quick question.
Quick question.
Yeah,
Okay.
quick question.
yeah,
What if I don't call it an ADU and I just want to add a room to the existing room that I have? Like, do I have to call it an ADU and add the solar?
No, because that's attached, so you're good. As long as it's just like, if it's a totally ground up unit, that's when they're gonna make you add solar.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
all right, guys, thanks for joining. Everybody have a great night.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.